Imagine walking into a five-star hotel. Its golden chandeliers glitter above your head, the marble floors gleam under your feet, and yet you are treated like you do not belong. That is exactly what happened to a simple woman turned away, humiliated, and left standing in the rain outside. Without anyone realizing, she was the wife of the billionaire who owned the entire hotel. What happened next shocked every guest, every employee, and turned this place of arrogance into a global symbol of kindness. Stay tuned, because this story will take you from quiet humiliation to a breathtaking moment of power and grace that the world will never forget. Would you also like me to write for image prompts and one video opening prompt in 8K cinematic detail to match this hook for your YouTube video? The rain tapped softly against the glass doors of the towering luxury hotel. The golden lights of the lobby glimmered like jewels, reflecting off polished marble floors. A soft melody floated through the air, the sound of a piano playing in the corner. The woman stepped inside, her simple cotton dress clinging slightly from the dampness of the evening rain. Her sandals squeaked softly as she walked across the marble. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and freshly cut flowers. She approached the front desk, hands clasping a small purse that had clearly seen better days. The receptionist glanced up, her smile polite but thin. "Good evening, may I help you?" "Yes," the woman said quietly. "I would like a room for the night." The receptionist's eyes scanned her quickly, taking in her plain dress and damp hair. There was a flicker of judgment in her gaze. "I am sorry, ma'am," the receptionist said. "We are fully booked tonight." The woman looked over her shoulder. At the almost empty lobby, her eyes lingered on the keys hanging neatly behind the desk. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Please," she said softly. "Just one night, I am willing to pay." The receptionist's smile did not change. "Unfortunately, our rooms are reserved for members and guests who have booked in advance," said. Another employee behind the desk whispered something too. Her colleague, both of them glancing at the woman. There was a muffled giggle. The woman felt her face grow warm. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. "I understand," she murmured, turning slightly to leave. A group of wealthy guests entered the lobby, laughing loudly, their jewelry sparkling under the lights. The receptionist greeted them warmly, her voice cheerful and welcoming. The woman's heart pounded. She had been turned away. She walked out of the lobby. Into the cool night air, the sound of the rain louder now. She stood under the glowing sign of the hotel, her eyes fixed on its name. Etched in gold, it was her husband's name. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She dialed a number she knew by heart. A deep voice answered immediately. "Hello, my love," he said warmly. "Are you all right?" She took a deep breath, her voice steady but soft. "I just tried to book a room at your hotel," she said. "They turned me away." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then his voice grew sharp. "Stay right there." The call ended. She slipped the phone back into her purse and wrapped her arms around herself. Moments later, the quiet night was broken by the roar of a sleek black car pulling up to the entrance. The driver hurried to open the door, and out stepped her husband. His tailored suit gleamed in the dim light, his expression unreadable. The hotel staff froze, their smiles faltering as they recognized him. He strode toward his wife, his hand reaching for hers, his eyes scanning her face with concern. "You all right?" he asked softly. She nodded faintly. But he turned his gaze toward the entrance. The receptionist's face had gone pale. Guests and staff alike watched in stunned silence. The billionaire's jaw tightened, his voice low and calm but edged with steel. "Who denied my wife a room in my hotel?" The room fell silent, the only sound the distant hum of traffic outside. The receptionist opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered her gaze. The husband's eyes were cold as ice as he stepped closer. "Answer." "Me," he said firmly. The staff shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered, "It was me, sir." The billionaire's stare cut through the air like a blade. He looked back at his wife, then back at the trembling staff. "You thought she was beneath this place," he said. His voice echoed through the lobby, quiet yet powerful. The employees exchanged nervous glances, their posture shrinking under his gaze. He took his wife's hand and led her inside, his presence commanding the entire room. Every guest in the lobby had gone silent. The receptionist's lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Sir, I did not know." "That is exactly the problem," he said coldly. The atmosphere grew heavy. Even the piano player had stopped. Mid-song, the scent of perfume now felt suffocating. The billionaire turned to his assistant, who had followed close behind. "Clear the top suite for my wife immediately," he ordered. The assistant nodded quickly and rushed off. The staff at the front desk stood frozen, their faces pale. The billionaire's eyes lingered on them for a long moment before he spoke again. "This is my wife," he said. His voice was calm but sharp as a knife. "She deserves more respect than anyone here." The staff swallowed hard, their shame visible. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders as he guided her toward the private elevator. The entire lobby watched in silence, stunned and uneasy. The receptionist's hands clutched the edge of the counter, her knuckles white, the sound of the elevator doors sliding open broke the tense silence. The woman stepped inside with her husband, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers. The doors closed, but the tension in the lobby remained like a shadow that would not fade. The billionaire's voice was the last sound they heard. "Find out who trained these people, and fire them." The staff's faces drained of all color. The air in the lobby felt colder. The wealthy guests whispered among themselves, their laughter gone. The woman leaned against her husband's shoulder as the elevator ascended, her heart racing. For the first time that night, she felt safe. The husband looked down at her and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "No one will ever treat you like that again," he said softly. The elevator chimed as they reached the top floor. The doors slid open to reveal the grand suite, glowing in golden light. He led her inside, his expression softening as he watched her take in the room. She walked slowly, her fingers brushing against the velvet curtains and the polished oak furniture. The room smelled faintly of lavender and cedar wood. It felt warm, safe, and luxurious. Her husband poured her a glass of wine and handed it to her. She accepted it with a small smile, but her mind was still replaying the humiliation she had felt downstairs. He noticed the shadow in her eyes and reached for his phone. "Would you like me to teach them a lesson they will never forget?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, her hand trembling slightly as she held the glass. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at him, sure of what he meant. He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in his expression. His fingers moved swiftly over his phone screen. Within minutes, the entire hotel staff received an urgent notification. Downstairs, panic spread among them like wildfire. Their whispers grew frantic as they read the message from the hotel owner himself, the receptionist's face turned white as she clutched her phone. The sound of hurried footsteps filled the lobby as managers rushed in, their expressions grim. The air was thick with fear and tension. Upstairs, the woman took a sip of her wine, her hands still trembling. She turned to her husband, her voice soft. "What? What did you do?" He looked at her calmly, his expression unreadable. "I made sure no one forgets who you are," he said. His words sent a chill down her spine. She set the glass down carefully, her heart pounding in her chest, far below. The once calm and luxurious hotel lobby now buzzed with chaos. Managers shouted orders. Phones rang endlessly. Guests whispered nervously. Sensing something was wrong, the receptionist stood frozen at the desk, tears forming in her eyes. The weight of the billionaire's wrath hung heavy in the air. "Would you like me to continue with the tension building even more and lead toward a shocking twist, or keep it at this level of suspense?" The billionaire set his phone aside, his eyes fixed on the city skyline outside the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows. The soft glow of the city lights reflected off his face, making his expression look even sharper. His wife sat quietly on the velvet sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She could feel the tension radiating from him, like a storm brewing just beyond the glass. Downstairs, chaos grew louder. Managers hurried back and forth, their voices low but urgent. One of them approached the receptionist, his face pale. "Do you realize what you have done?" he whispered harshly. The receptionist's hands trembled as she stared at the ground. I thought she was you." "Thought wrong," the manager snapped, across the lobby. The assistant stood with a clipboard, speaking sharply into a headset. Every word carried a weight that made the staff shrink back. "Effective immediately." "No," she said, her voice cold. "Several employees are suspended. The owner's on his way back down." Gasps rippled through the staff. The receptionist felt her knees weaken. Upstairs, the woman's heart ached as she listened to the distant echoes of panic. She turned to her husband, her voice soft. "Please, do not be too harsh. They did not know." His gaze softened for a brief moment as he looked at her. "They judged you," he said quietly. "Not because they did not know, but because they assumed." She looked down at her hands, feeling both hurt and uneasy. "I do not want anyone to lose their job because of me," she whispered. He moved closer, kneeling in front of her, his hand gently resting on hers. "You are my wife," he said. "Anyone who treats you with disrespect is insulting me directly. This is my hotel, my empire. They need to understand that power comes with consequences." His words were calm, but his tone carried a sharp edge that sent a chill through her. Moments later, the assistant knocked softly on the suite door. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, "the staff has been gathered in the lobby." The billionaire stood, adjusting his suit jacket. His wife's eyes widened. "You are going down there?" she asked softly. He looked at her and nodded once. "They need to see you," he said. "They need to know who they dismissed so icily." Her breath quickened. I do not know if I want to," she whispered. He reached out and held her hand firmly. "You will stand beside me," he said, "and they will remember this moment for the rest of their lives." She hesitated, but his grip was steady, his presence unshakable. Reluctantly, she stood, her heart racing as they walked toward the private elevator. When the doors slid open, staff waiting below heard the soft chime. Every head turned. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. The billionaire stepped out first, his expression calm but commanding. His wife followed closely, her simple dress standing in stark contrast to the luxury around her. The receptionist's face crumpled with regret as she realized who she had turned away. The billionaire's voice cut through the heavy silence. "This is my wife," he said clearly. His words echoed through the grand lobby. "She came here seeking a room, and you turned her away." No one dared to speak. Even the guests who had been watching curiously now stood in stunned silence. He slowly guided his wife to stand beside him, his arm protectively around her shoulders. "She is the woman I built all of this for," he said, his voice sharp. "And tonight you treated her as if she was nothing." The receptionist's lips trembled as tears welled in her eyes. I am sorry," she whispered. "Sorry is not enough," he said coldly. He turned his gaze to the managers. "This hotel will never treat any guest like this again. Fire her, and anyone else who judged my wife without even offering her a seat." The words struck like a whip. The receptionist gasped, her hands covering her mouth. The billionaire's assistant nodded sharply and began writing down names. The woman's heart ached as she watched the scene unfold. She gently touched her husband's arm. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That is enough." He turned to her, his eyes softening slightly. "They disrespected you," he said. "They should face consequences." She nodded, but her voice was firm. "Teach them. Do not destroy them." His jaw tightened as he studied her face. The entire room waited, breathless, for his next words. "Would you like me to make this climax?" Even more intense, with a dramatic twist where the billionaire's punishment is shocking and unforgettable, or should I steer it into a powerful yet graceful resolution where she becomes the voice of mercy? The billionaire's gaze lingered on his wife's face, her calm but pleading expression softening the sharp edges of his anger. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders loosening slightly. "Very well," he said, his deep voice carrying through the silent lobby. No one will lose their job tonight." A collective breath of relief rippled through the staff, but no one dared to move or speak. His arm tightened gently around her shoulders as he turned his cold eyes back to the employees. "But make no mistake," he said firmly. "This hotel will change immediately." The manager straightened, nodding quickly. The billionaire's voice was calm but filled with authority. "Every guest is to be treated with dignity," he continued. "No matter how they look, no matter what they wear, no one should ever feel small inside these walls." The woman's heart swelled at his words, though she could still feel the icy tension in the room. He looked back at his wife, his tone softening. "Would you like to say something?" he asked her gently. She hesitated, feeling dozens of eyes on her. Then she stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "I came here tonight because I wanted to surprise my husband," she said softly. "I wanted to see the hotel he built with his own hands." Her voice was steady, though her chest tightened with emotion. "I was not wearing expensive clothes," she continued. "I did not look like someone who could afford this place. But I still hoped for kindness." Some staff members lowered their heads in shame. "I am not angry," she said. "But I am deeply sad, because if I, as his wife, was treated this way, how many others have felt the same?" The silence in the room was heavy. A few staff members looked visibly shaken, her eyes glistening with guilt. Her husband placed a hand on her shoulder, pride flickering in his eyes. "Remember her words," he said sharply. "This is not a threat. It is a warning. This hotel will be a place of excellence, not arrogance." He turned to his assistant. "Arrange a meeting tomorrow. Every single staff member will undergo new training. Those in management will personally apologize to my wife." "Yes, sir," the assistant said, already taking notes. The billionaire looked around one last time, his presence commanding absolute silence. Then he guided his wife back toward the elevator, his hand resting gently on her back. The staff and guests watched in stunned silence, the weight of the moment heavy in their chests. As the elevator doors closed, whispers began to ripple through the lobby. Some employees wept quietly. Others stood frozen, realizing how close they had come to losing everything. Upstairs, the woman leaned against her husband's shoulder, exhaustion washing over her. He kissed her forehead softly, his anger melting away in her presence. "You are extraordinary," he whispered. "Even in this, you showed more grace than they deserved." She smiled faintly, resting her head against him. "I only wanted to remind them of kindness," she said softly. He wrapped his arm around her and held her close as they stepped back into the golden glow of the suite. But far below them, the hotel was still buzzing with tension. The staff moved with frantic urgency, managers rushing to prepare for the changes that would come. The receptionist sat quietly behind the counter, tears slipping down her cheeks as she stared at her trembling hands. She would never forget the look in the woman's eyes. The shame was heavy, but so was the lesson. The billionaire stood by the window of the suite, his sharp gaze fixed on the city lights. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low but firm, "this entire hotel will operate differently." His wife walked up behind him, resting her hand on his arm. "And tonight?" she asked softly. "Tonight," he said, turning to her with a faint smile, "is for us." He led her to the balcony, the cool night breeze brushing against their faces. Far below, the city moved like a river of light. Inside the hotel, every staff member was on edge, waiting for what was to come. The woman felt his warmth beside her and closed her eyes, finally at peace. But the billionaire's mind was already working, already planning. This was only the beginning of a transformation that would shake every person under his name, and no one would ever forget the night they turned his wife away. "Would you also like me to write the next scene where the billionaire personally addresses the hotel's board and turns this scandal into a legendary story of power and respect?" The next morning, sunlight streamed through the towering windows of the penthouse suite. The woman stirred awake, the soft rustle of silk sheets wrapping around her. Her husband was already dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit, standing by the window with a phone pressed to his ear. His expression was calm, but his voice carried quiet authority. "Call the board members," he said firmly. I want every executive in the conference room within the hour." He ended the call and turned to her with a warm smile. "Good morning, my love," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded faintly, sitting up, though her heart still felt heavy from the night before. "I am all right," she said gently. "But they must be terrified." "They should be," he replied, his tone sharp again. "This is not just about us. It's about the name I built and the values I stand for." She lowered her gaze, her fingers playing with the edge. "Of the sheets? Do you really have to summon them all?" she asked softly. His expression softened as he walked over to her, crouching down so his eyes met hers. "Yes," he said quietly, "because I will not allow arrogance to grow in what I built with hard work. Today, they will understand what this place truly represents." She reached for his hand, holding it gently. "Then promise me something," she whispered. "Anything," he replied. "Promise me you will not humiliate them. Teach them, change them, but do not destroy them." His jaw tightened for a moment, but he nodded. "For you, I will," he said softly. A knock came at the door. His assistant stepped in, her posture crisp and professional. "Sir, the executives are gathered in the top conference room," she said. "They are waiting." "Good," he said, standing tall. "We will go together." The woman's eyes widened slightly. "Me?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," he said with a faint smile. "You are the reason they are here, and your words will carry more weight than mine." She hesitated, but finally nodded minutes later. They walked through the grand halls of the hotel. The staff they passed stood straighter than ever, bowing their heads in respect as the couple passed by. The air was thick with tension. When they entered the massive conference room, every executive stood at once. The billionaire's sharp gaze swept over them. They were all impeccably dressed, but their nervousness was clear in their stiff postures and darting eyes. He pulled out a chair for his wife, and she sat beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap. He remained standing, his presence commanding the room. "This hotel carries my name," he said firmly, his voice calm but powerful. "It is not just a building. It is a reflection of me, my wife, and everything I believe in." No one dared to speak. "Last night," he continued, "my wife came here to stay. She was turned away. Not because there were no rooms, not because of any policy. She was turned away because someone assumed she was not worthy of this place." A few executives shifted uncomfortably. "This," he said sharply, "is a disgrace." He placed his hand on the table, his gaze cold. "Some of you may be wondering if this is only about my wife. It is not. This is about every guest who has ever been made to feel less. This is about the culture that has been allowed to take root here." The woman took a deep breath, her voice soft but steady as she spoke. "I do not wish for anyone to be punished," she said, "but I do wish for change." Her words hung in the air, soft yet powerful. "I came here last night hoping for warmth," she continued. "Instead, I felt invisible. I do not want another person to feel that way in this place." Several executives looked down at their hands, guilt etched across their faces. The billionaire nodded at her words, his voice cutting through the silence. "Again, this hotel will change, starting today," he said. "Customer treatment training will be mandatory for every employee, no matter their rank. Promotions will no longer depend only on numbers, but also on guest satisfaction. And anyone caught disrespecting a guest," he paused, his gaze sharp as a blade, "will not work here a single day longer." The assistant took notes swiftly, her pen gliding across the paper. The billionaire sat down beside his wife, his arm resting lightly on her chair. "But this lesson does not end here," he said, his tone calm but deadly serious. "I will personally visit this hotel every week. I will do so without announcing it. I want to see who treats strangers with respect when they think no one is watching." The room was silent, the weight of his words pressing on every person present. His wife looked at him, admiration and pride shining in her eyes. "This hotel was built to represent something greater than wealth," she said softly. "It should represent kindness, dignity, and warmth. Please, Let us restore that. Some executives nodded, their expressions solemn. The billionaire stood once more, adjusting his suit jacket. You heard her, he said firmly. You have 1 week to start implementing these changes. I expect progress. I expect accountability. And I expect excellence. The executives murmured in agreement, their voices hushed and respectful. He reached for his wife's hand, helping her up as they prepared to leave. But just as they reached the door, one of the managers spoke up nervously. Sir, may we speak to your wife privately? We would like to apologize to her personally. The woman froze for a moment, then glanced at her husband. He gave her a small nod, his expression unreadable. She turned back to the manager, her soft voice carrying across the tense room. I will listen, she said gently. The room grew quiet again as all eyes turned to her. The managers stepped forward, their voices trembling as they began to speak. Would you like me to continue with the scene, where the staff's emotional apologies deeply move her, leading to a powerful transformation of the hotel's culture? Or would you prefer a dramatic twist, where this meeting reveals a hidden betrayal inside the company? The managers exchanged nervous glances before one of them, an older man with graying hair, stepped forward. His hands shook slightly as he clasped them in front of him. Madam, he began softly, his voice thick with emotion. I am deeply ashamed. The woman tilted her head slightly, her calm expression inviting him to continue. I have been in this industry for 20 years, he said, his voice trembling. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that a hotel is not just about luxury. It is about service. It is about making every guest feel welcome, no matter who they are. His eyes lowered, shame weighing down his posture. I was standing nearby when the receptionist refused to her room, he admitted, and I said nothing. That makes me just as guilty. The woman's heart softened as she listened. Another manager, a younger woman with neatly tied hair, stepped forward, her voice shaky. I was one of the people who laughed, she confessed, tears forming in her eyes. I thought you looked out of place here. I judged you without even speaking to you, and I am so sorry. The woman felt a lump form in her throat. She glanced at her husband, whose face remained stern, though his hand tightened protectively around hers. The younger manager wiped her tears. I grew up with nothing, she said softly. I should have known better, but I let this place change me. I became cold, arrogant, and now I see how wrong I was. The woman stepped forward, her voice gentle. Thank you for your honesty, she said softly. You have no idea how much courage it takes to say what you just said. The staff members lowered their heads, guilt etched across their faces. I am not here to humiliate anyone, she continued, her voice steady but kind. I am here because this hotel, with its beauty and luxury, should make every person who enters feel like they belong, no matter how they look, no matter where they come from. A murmur of agreement spread across the executives and staff. The billionaire watched his wife with pride, his expression softening as she spoke. She turned back to the managers, her tone firm but compassionate. You will not be punished beyond this lesson, she said, but I expect you to change. I expect you to show warmth and dignity to every guest who walks through those doors, not because of fear, but because it is the right thing to do. Tears glistened in the receptionist's eyes as she finally found the courage to speak. I will never forget this, she whispered. I promise, madam, I will be better. The woman stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on the young woman's shoulder. I believe you, she said with a soft smile. The billionaire's voice broke the silence, deep and commanding. From this day forward, this hotel will not only be known for its luxury, he said, it will be known for its heart. And you will all ensure that happens. Everyone in the room nodded, their expressions solemn. The woman could feel the shift in the air and unspoken understanding settling over them all. For the first time since entering the hotel the night before, she felt a sense of peace. Her husband took her hand and led her out of the conference room. The staff and executives stood in silence, watching her leave with newfound respect in their eyes as the doors closed behind them. The billionaire glanced down at her, his lips curving into a small smile. You were incredible, he said softly. She leaned into him, her voice quiet. I just wanted them to see that kindness can be stronger than fear. He kissed her forehead, pride shining in his eyes, and they did, said. Downstairs, whispers spread among the staff. They spoke of her grace, her composure, and her mercy. The receptionist, now wiping her tears, looked at her colleagues with determination. She is the kind of woman we should be proud to serve, she said softly. From now on, no guests will leave here feeling unwelcome. The other staff members nodded, some with tears in their eyes. In that moment, a transformation began within the hotel, not from threats, not from fear, but from the powerful kindness of the woman they had underestimated. Later that evening, as the couple stood together on the balcony of their suite, the city glowing beneath them, the billionaire wrapped his arms around her. Changed more tonight than I ever could with all my power, he murmured. She smiled faintly, resting her head on his chest. And you protected me when I needed it, she whispered back. He kissed the top of her head, his arms holding her close. This hotel will never be the same again, said, and deep down they both knew it was true. Would you like me to now add a powerful final twist that shows this? Story spreading worldwide, turning her into a symbol of grace and making their hotel empire legendary? Asterisk weeks passed and the frenzy around the hotel's transformation began to settle. The headlines faded. The cameras stopped flashing, but the change within the hotel remained. Guests walked through the grand entrance not only expecting luxury, but feeling something deeper: warmth, welcome, dignity. Employees moved with a new sense of purpose, their smiles genuine, their service thoughtful. Even the once timid receptionist now greeted guests with confidence. Her voice warm, her eyes kind. The woman often walked through the lobby quietly, unnoticed by many, but she watched with pride as kindness bloomed in every corner. She had not set out to create a legacy, yet one had formed naturally, like sunlight. Breaking through clouds, her husband stood beside her one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they looked out over the sparkling city from their balcony. You changed this place forever, he said softly. She smiled faintly and rested her head on his chest. No, she whispered. We changed it together. The hotel behind them glowed like a beacon, not of wealth or power, but of grace, and from that night onward, every guest who entered its doors felt something rare and unforgettable, a quiet reminder that true luxury is not gold or marble, but kindness that leaves an imprint on the heart. And so, the story of the simple woman who was once denied a room became legend, not because of scandal, but because of the gentle strength that turned a moment of judgment into a lasting legacy of compassion. The empire was greater than ever, but its greatest treasure was her heart.